Hey, welcome back to Better Than Yourself. Today on Better Than Yourself, I want to take a revisit to the meat curing fridge. We saw that in this video a while back, where we're fermenting meat. When you ferment meat, there are a couple of little caveats, a little bit more complicated than the kind of procedures that we follow normally on this channel, where you just take some veggies or some fruit, dump some brine on top, let it sit aside for a week. When you ferment meat, it's a little bit more of a controlled environment. Specifically, what I like to do is, you can see my setup here. I've got a wine cooler refrigerator that I've rebuilt, if you will, and made it into a meat curing refrigerator. The wine curing refrigerator is at my choice because just its compact size. You know, I don't do a lot of, production of hundreds of pounds of cured meat in a year. So something like a wine refrigerator is a perfect solution. The game is with a wine chiller, with a mini fridge like this. You generally have a set range of about 32 to maybe 55 degrees if you're lucky. And what that is usually there'll be a thermostat, a little turn dial to left for cooler, up in the top where the light is. What I've done is just removed that. And here you can see I've got just the bare wires. So I tore the whole controller out, and then I've done these for a couple of people now, but I found that it's pretty consistent. The red and black just get shorted together, and then the white I'll put a wire nut on each one of these and then tape all the wires up to the top of the fridge. These are currently live. I'll insulate these and then I'll just tape them up with some black tape. If you're interested in what's going on in the box here, the only real working hardware is just the dehumidifier. Like I said, this is probably a $45 portable dehumidifier. People take them when they travel, and essentially you've got an on-off switch. I've got mine on because it's controlled by the controller. And then occasionally, probably once a month, I come down here and just dump the water back in the pan. So I've got kind of a closed loop system here. The water evaporates out of the dish, but in the case that it does get a little high, the controller will sense that the relative humidity is more than 75% and kick the dehumidifier on for a couple of minutes. Like I said, I probably once a month I'll dump out like that much water. So it's a super efficient system. It really doesn't take much. Elsewhere in here is, like I said, just a piece of braseola, is a piece of cured beef, and it was soaked in wine and then soaked in salt and spices and cured and dipped into a culture of penicillin, which is what you see growing on here. So essentially, like if you buy a camembert cheese and you have that white fluffy mold growing on the camembert, that's exactly what I've got growing on here. So it's like a big camembert meat that I'm growing. But that's how you make braciole. So instead of plugging the refrigerator directly into the wall and burning out my motor and making this perpetual ice age refrigerator, that's not what I want. What I want is to have a more fine grain control over the temperature in the refrigerator, specifically about 65 degrees. Another thing I want to do when I'm curing my meat is keep the relative humidity somewhat stable at a very high, at about 75% relative humidity. So what I'm going to use is the Inkbird ITC-608T, which is a dual channel, that is temperature and humidity controller. I can set it to do either heating or cooling, and then I can set it to do either humidification or dehumidification. So for my application, what I'm going to do is I've got my fridge plugged in right here, and which is obviously cooling, so I'm going to talk about how to set this up as a cooling controller. And then this other plug is the wall wart for this big white box down here, which is actually a little mini dehumidifier. So what I've done is taken a pan of water, which is constantly evaporating, creating humidity in the box. The Inkbird will sense when the humidity rises above 75%, it'll turn on the dehumidifier. And then the other half of the equation is when the temperature goes above 65 degrees, the Inkbird will turn on the fridge and bring that temperature back down for me. So basically I've created this kind of perfectly controlled environment for curing things like that braciole that you see I have hanging there. You saw this refrigerator a couple of videos ago, well, quite a few videos ago, when I did the pork curing video. did this same thing. I used my old controller at the time. Here's the old guy here that is just kind of some hardwired parts. This is actually showing 38% humidity here in the basement. And you can see I'm sitting around a cool, comfortable 64% relative humidity in the chill chest. This is 62 degrees down here, and obviously the fridge is about the same. But what is it? I mean, these controllers, let me unplug it here, is you have wall power, and then you have a couple of probes. You have some temperature probes, and then a humidity probe, and then you can wire up your plugs on the back. I mean, this is my homemade device. You can do your temperature controller, plug my fridge into that. I can plug my dehumidifier in the middle one, and then I've just got a constant, basically always on. So Inkbird saw this and said, no. What you want is our controller. Much nicer device. Very clean, compact, one set of buttons. Here, zoom in, I'll show you how to program it. Like I said, real neat device. 2 outlets, either heating and cooling, humidifying, dehumidifying. You've got 2 probes, which just plug in down here. They're actually interchangeable. You can plug the wrong one into the wrong port and have a look. The thing will readjust. It'll sense what probe it's got on there and will set itself up accordingly. And then I've just kind of taken and wrapped my wires around the corner here and dressed them off to the side. I've done this, as you can see, on the hinge side. So that way all my wires are out of my way when I'm trying to get in and move some meat around in there. And I've taken these 2 probes, run them through the hinge of the refrigerator just on the inside, and then they dangle down behind in the back of what's going on in the back of the refrigerator. When people buy these controllers for the first time, they're a little daunting. I mean, you have a look at the manual and you're faced with this, and it takes a couple minutes to kind of get your bearings, but I'll go through it real slow. We can walk through and see what the settings are that are available, and you'll see that it's very logical. It is a logical controller. So you just kind of have to think like a controller, and you too can program this thing. So essentially, you can see here the normal readout is, well, here I've got the shipping plastic on there. It always irks me when people leave stuff like this on their electronics. The normal display is the temperature in Fahrenheit and then the relative humidity. If you want to make a quick change to that, you just hit the set button. And you can change, maybe I want to turn it up a couple of degrees or turn it down a couple of degrees. Hit the set button again. Here you can see my set point is 75% relative humidity, meaning that when the relative humidity, when the amount of water in the air relative to the temperature increases over 75%, it'll turn on my dehumidifier. If you spend a lot of time talking, it'll just kick out of the quick program mode. So temp, humidity, maybe it's a little too moist in there. I want to turn it down by 0.1% to, let's say 70% for the sake of demonstration here. Perfect. Hit set again, and it goes back to what it's looking at, what it's sensing. That's the easiest way to program it, but I know you guys, you like full control over everything. Let's get into it. Hold the button down, and you get into this funny screen. So essentially you can go between setting the temperature controls or the humidity controls. So temperature, humidity. Let's go through the temperature first. So we'll hit set to move to the next setting. Are we heating or cooling? We'll be cooling. Temperature setting, 63 degrees. We just set that a second ago. There you can see we've confirmed, yes, it's set to 63 degrees. And of course, with any one of these settings, you can change it with the arrows. Set. DS is the differential setting. Now, as you're working with a controller and controlling something that kind of a sophisticated piece of equipment, a refrigerator compressor, you don't want this thing set to 0. You don't want it so that if I've got it set to 65 and the temperature goes to 64, the compressor immediately comes on and chills the refrigerator, and then it gets to 65 and immediately turns off, because the compressor is going to keep coming on and off, and you're going to burn your equipment out too quickly. So keep your temperature differential maybe 3 degrees, just so it'll get up to 68, and then it'll cool down to 64, and then it'll cool up to 67. So you're sort of around 65 degrees, but it doesn't have to be exact. It's fine. Here is alarm high. I've got it set to 70 degrees. Essentially, if this thing doesn't cool at 60, it goes past 65, goes up to my differential of 68, and then continues to climb, this alarm is going to go off at 70 degrees. Same with alarm low. I've got it set to 50, that for some reason maybe this controller fails. So it's got built-in settings that it will sense, oh gee, I've left the compressor on too long. It's getting down, temperature's dropping. Let's kick the alarm on. So essentially I've got it set to alarm at 50 degrees and 70 degrees. That's kind of my window of goodness versus alarm condition. PT is compressor delay. Essentially, if you've got a different kind of a cooling arrangement or some kind of different equipment other than a fridge where you want to control it by temperature, but maybe the way your cooling equipment works is that a compressor comes on. So you can set this from 0 to 10 minutes of time, meaning that I've got it set to 0 right now because I'm just using the temperature differential. If you want to use the compressor time setting, you can set it to go ahead and wait a certain amount of time, from 0 to 10 seconds. If you stand around and talk while you're programming it, it'll just kick out of the program mode. And in fact, save all the settings you've already made. So we can just go down through and get back to where we were. Alarm low, compressor, time, calibration, 0.0 degrees Fahrenheit. You can actually set this if you find that you've got this plugged in and that it's off, the temperature probe isn't working quite right. You can actually change this and put a little bit of a calibration adjustment in there. I found this thermometer is dead on, so I just leave that alone. And then here the last setting is Celsius or Fahrenheit. So I live in North America and we tend to use Fahrenheit a little bit more often. And we're back to this. I have no idea what N bar D means, but it's basically the top of the menu. Temperature, let's go through the humidity settings. Set. So we're humidifying, dehumidifying. I want to dehumidify. Remember my dehumidifier down there. Humidity setting. Yeah, I've got set for 70%. That's a little low because what? I changed it out in the other menu. Maybe change it to 71. Again, it's all arbitrary. This is your controller. You set what you want. Your differential setting, again, that, don't turn the equipment on and off quickly. About 3 degrees, 3% of relative humidity. So it'll get up to, 72, I think I just typed in. So when it gets up to 75, it'll kick the dehumidifier on. Alarm high, 85% relative humidity. I want the alarm to come on. Alarm low, 50% relative humidity. It's getting really dry in there. I don't want to dry my braceole out too quickly. So set an alarm off. Remember our old friend, the compressor timeout. And then my calibration adjustment for humidity. Back to the top. Just hold the button down. And you go back to regular mode. Real neat. There's two little dots here. There's 2 dots here, one's off, one's on. There's 2 dots here, this one's on, this one's off. So in this line, it's basically saying this is a cooling device, this is a dehumidifying device. If you were to set this up to control a heater, how would you do that? Well, hold down set, right? We want to control a heater. This isn't going to make any sense on my refrigerator. Temperature, set, heating, cooling, turning it into a heating device. And then just hold the button down. And look, this has changed. So it now knows that it's a heating device. But just to give you an example of how you can really quickly read this standard display here, let's set that back to cooling, lest we forget. Temperature, set, cooling, set, hold down, set. And there, you can make a real quick temperature or any kind of a setting change. And that's it. I mean, that's the whole programming language for this temperature controller. Literally, there's, you go down and set the temperature settings, you go down and set humidity settings, hold the button down for 2 seconds, and you're done. If you make some crazy adjustment and you can't find it, and you are looking through the menus and something is just wrong, you can actually go back to factory reset, really quickly, if you just hold the set button down for about, I think, 6 or 7 seconds, it'll beep, and reset essentially, and it'll be back to the factory settings. And then you can go through and see, very systematically adjust every setting so that it's set exactly the way you want it. You can, if you don't want to mess with the alarm, if you don't want to mess with the adjustments or the compressor delays, you can literally hold the button down, do a factory reset, and then just hit it once real quick, and then just go into this menu where you can set the temperature and the relative humidity. But by and large, that's the Inkbird ITC-608T controller. Super piece of gear, super inexpensive, about $60-65 on Amazon. You can grab one on the link down below and help my channel out a little bit. I get a little bit of a kickback from Amazon when you guys buy stuff through my links. Appreciate that, by the way. Thank you. Appreciate. And if you have any questions about this controller or anything else about curing meat in this instance, drop me a comment below, and I'm really good about it. I get them right on my phone, so I'm always happy to answer any questions you guys have. And I'll see you guys next time on Better Done Yourself.